Will Malik Willis get drafted in the top 10? Now, Willis has been one of the more impressive prospects during the draft process since the college football season was over. He did really well during the Senior Bowl, really well during the Combine. He also had a pretty good showing at his pro day. And many people think that he's a lock for the first round, myself included. I would be really surprised if Malik Willis fell out of the first round and was drafted on day 2. And the reason why I would be surprised is because, he has done so well during the draft process. I pretty much already had a feeling that once we got to the combine and we got to, pro days, that Malik Willis was going to dominate because his tape at Liberty, a lot of people, you see the potential, but you also see a lot of red flags that shows you that Malik Willis has a lot of room for improvement, But that's a lot of the quarterbacks in this draft class, which makes this a really intriguing argument because even though this is probably one of the weakest draft classes in a lot of people's eyes, there are still going to be a couple of quarterbacks there who are going to get taken pretty highly. And I think that Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis are going to be the 2 QBs who potentially will get drafted inside the top 10. Now, you're probably asking JT, what team in the top 10 at the moment do you see most likely drafting Malik Willis? Well, I think that the Falcons are really interesting. The Falcons right now have the 8th overall selection. They signed Marcus Mariota to a short-term deal, not really a lot of money. So you could bring in Malik Willis. He can sit behind Mariota for a year or a couple of weeks, depending on if Marcus Mariota is able to stay healthy. Then when it's Malik Willis' turn to step up or Marcus Mariota fizzles out, you put Malik in and you have your quarterback of the future. And for the Atlanta Falcons, they have a lot of needs. So, it may be a little bit of a stretch for them to go quarterback when you consider the fact that they have one of the worst rosters in the league and they probably will be in the running for having the number 1 overall pick next season, or they're definitely going to be picking top 3, top 5. So they're going to have the opportunity to draft either a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud or a Grayson McCall if they decide to declare for the draft next year. So you're going to have the opportunity to get another stab at drafting your franchise quarterback. You don't need a quarterback this year if you are Atlanta. For the Seattle Seahawks, they may be in a similar situation, not entirely of the fact that, Atlanta's roster is one of the worst in the league. I don't think Seattle has one of the worst rosters in the NFL. However, their roster isn't all that great. It just isn't as bad as Atlanta's. Atlanta pretty much only has about 2 or maybe 3 great players, and that's about it. You look at Seattle, they just traded away Russell Wilson. They have Drew Lock. So, Drew Lock, we saw what he was during Denver, and he wasn't really all that great. So maybe Pete Carroll and Seattle take a flyer on Drew Lock and give him the opportunity to be their week 1 starter. However, why not go ahead and draft Malik Willis? Because, if Malik Willis hits, then you can get rid of Drew Lock, who doesn't really have, a crazy contract, anything like that. So there really isn't no logical reason why Seattle shouldn't draft a quarterback, because you got Drew Lock. He can easily be cut or traded again if you want to get rid of him. So I really feel why would you settle for Drew Lock when you have the opportunity to go for bigger and you need bigger? And it's not one of those situations where, well, JT, Drew Lock is good enough to win a couple of games. No, he's not. You get what I'm saying? Drew Lock isn't Jimmy Garoppolo or Alex Smith. He's not a quarterback that has proven that he has won. He just can't get it done in the postseason. Drew Lock has proven so far during his career that he's not really a great QB, so he has a little bit more to prove. So it isn't really the same scenario as a San Francisco or whatnot. So if you draft Malik Willis, if you're Seattle, you probably could have a similar situation to what New England had. Now, not completely 100% similar, but, there are a little bit of similarities in this because you're going to have two quarterbacks who you could start either one. So you're going to have a quarterback competition. And depending on who gets the hot hand, that's who you start week one. Now, if Drew Lock plays well, what happens then? Well, then you could maybe trade Drew Lock, or you keep Drew Lock, or you trade Malik Willis. Don't really know. It'll be kind of weird, but Seattle is definitely a team to look out for. Pittsburgh isn't in the top 10 necessarily, but I do think that Pittsburgh is heavily interested in Malik Willis. Like, out of all of the teams that I've seen the most rumors and the most stories about connected to Malik Willis, Pittsburgh has been the forefront of, those stories. It was one that came out that said that Mike Tomlin and Malik Willis went out to eat. They got wings. So I think that Pittsburgh is definitely a team that could end up pulling the trigger and trading up into the top 10 to draft Malik Willis. But a dark horse team could be the Detroit Lions, because we don't really truly know how Dan Quinn and the front office of the Detroit Lions feel about Jared Goff completely. Like, they could end up drafting Malik Willis and saying, hey, like, we're going to let him sit for a year, and then we're going to end up letting him learn from Jared Goff, who is a pretty solid quarterback. He's not bad, but you definitely could do better. So Jared Goff plays for a year. After that, you trade him away in the offseason, or you try to release him. And then Malik Willis ends up stepping up, or you let Malik Willis sit behind Jared Goff for 2 years instead of 1, allow him to get double the experience, double the learning, and, eventually start him when you're ready to move on from Jared Goff, and you can save out on his contract by releasing him. So I think that there are a lot more teams who could draft Malik Willis, but I think that there is a strong possibility that Malik Willis gets drafted in the top 10, and I think that he won't. I think he probably will get drafted somewhere between 11 and 24, somewhere around that range. Like, I can't see Malik Willis falling out of the first round, because I understand he has a lot of room for improvement. He has a lot of things that he has to work on. However, the upside and the potential is there. He has the upside to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and a lot of teams over the last couple of years, or the past couple of drafts, have swung for the upside. So I don't really think that we're going to see all that much difference this year. Somebody's going to be in love with Kenny Pickett, because Kenny Pickett is regarded as the most pro-ready quarterback, which I would agree with. And there's going to be somebody who's going to fall in love with the upside of Malik Willis, who probably is the quarterback who has the highest upside compared to the other quarterbacks in this class. So I could see Malik Willis getting drafted in the top 10. I don't think it'll happen. I think he's going to go somewhere between 13 and 24, but I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen. And I definitely wouldn't be shocked if we seen a team trade up a lot to get Malik Willis into the top 10 to acquire one of those top 10 selections, because pretty much there are a lot of teams who could end up trading down, like Jacksonville, maybe. Detroit, maybe. The Giants have 2 top 10 picks, so maybe they could trade one of those for more additional capital. So there are a lot of teams that potentially could trade up to draft Malik Willis that I'm not even talking about, like New Orleans. Like New Orleans brought back Jameis Winston, but there also could be maybe some internal discussion that, hey, maybe we should go ahead and get our quarterback of the future, since, we could get him on a rookie deal that's going to save a lot of cap space compared to how much cap space you probably would have to use when you're paying a veteran quarterback. So you bring in Malik Willis and get rid of Jameis after a year. So now that you have Malik Willis, if you're in New Orleans, you're going to have a quarterback on a rookie deal, which is going to help you out a lot with something that the Saints are going to need, because they have had a lot of trouble with the salary cap over the last couple of years. They've been playing catch up, trying to get their salary cap number down. And even right now, I still think they're under their salary cap. So, drafting a young rookie quarterback and having a rookie quarterback on that rookie deal will greatly benefit New Orleans. It will also allow them to continue to build up their team around Malik Willis. So I think that New Orleans could also be a really good fit. I think Tennessee could be a dark horse team that not too many people are talking about. Just saying, like, the quarterback market in the NFL is at an all-time high. Like, this is like the quarterbacks that we have in the NFL now are better than the quarterbacks that we've had a decade ago. And even, like the worst quarterbacks in the league a decade ago would be considered to be middle of the pack. So you look at all the teams who are in the need for a quarterback. There's going to be a team that I think is going to draft Malik Willis. I just don't think that is going to be in the top 10. However, I do think that he is a sure-in lock for the first round. Just can't see him getting drafted in the top 10. It's like, it's so many great defensive prospects. Like, I don't think that teams are going to be willing to pass up on a Kayvon Thibodeau in favor of a Malik Willis, because, like, the reason why some teams in the top 10 may be opposed to drafting Malik Willis is because, like, you're not going to be able to start him day one. So what's the point of using a first round pick or a top 10 pick on somebody who's not going to have an impact on my franchise right away? Because some teams aren't looking for the future. Some teams are drafting prospects who can come in and help them win right away. So some teams might not be in the market for drafting Malik Willis in the top 10. They may be looking at other players on the defensive end who they would like to use their top 10 selection on. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Malik Willis will get drafted in the top 10? Let me know down in the comment section if you are watching this on YouTube.